In the latest issue of The Real Deal, we have a billionaire facing a blockbuster foreclosure, resi brokers behaving badly, a commercial brokerage trying to claw its way into the #1 spot, and our annual special Hamptons section. Keep watching for insights into a few of those stories and check them all out online now and on doorstep soon. So Charles Cohen is in some trouble. Can you tell me who he is to start?
He is the head of Cohen Brothers Realty, which is a family firm. They've been around in New York City building office since like the late 60s or so. And he bought out his dad and uncle in the 80s. He's also a cinephile. He has a soft spot for French films, but I think at his core, he characterizes himself as an esthete. He is a design guy. He owns a design center. He owns a vineyard. He owns a magazine. He owns 2 luxury retailers. So he's sort of living in these 2 different worlds.
Yeah. And lately in the real estate world, he has been experiencing some trouble in his portfolio. You've been tracking it for a couple months.
Last summer is when we first realized that he had about $500 million in delinquent debt. It was largely tied to office buildings. And it was interesting because I would say in like 2020 or so, when COVID first hit office, he was really adamant that things would bounce back, it wouldn't be so bad. But, you know, in 2023, as we're looking at the occupancy rates in his buildings, they've steadily ticked down. So it's like, are things bouncing back? Not quite. And then in the spring of this year, we got this blockbuster lawsuit from Fortress, which is a private lender, a lot different than those office buildings, which were tied to CMBS debt. So there's a little bit more wiggle room there. If there's a delinquent loan, you know, it can go to special servicing and hang out in that section for a long time. So there's room for workouts. Fortress sued because Cohen defaulted on a separate $500 million in debt. And a month later, Fortress filed what seems to be the largest UCC foreclosure ever. And we know from this bevy of court docs that hit e-courts like 2 weeks ago or so that Fortress tried to work with Cohen for a long time, months, and it didn't pan out. So it raises the question, you know, will this foreclosure go through?
And he hasn't actually lost any of his assets yet. But if he did, what do you think that would signal for the market more widely?
Yeah, it's an interesting case because what's going on with him is both very specific to him. You know, the Fortress assets, I do want to say the assets that are tied to the Fortress loan, they run the gamut. You know, it's a design center, it's a hotel, it's a redevelopment site, it's a number of movie theaters. So some of those were sort of like risky bets, like indie movie theaters. We love the movies, but it's not necessarily a money-making prospect. So some of that is like, was Cohen making good decisions on what he was buying? But I do think, and you know, I'm speaking to sources, if the fact that Fortress filed this bevy of court documents, a number of affidavits showing that they were going back and forth with negotiations for months, and in the end, it seemed like Cohen wasn't putting up the additional collateral that Fortress wanted. So I think what this says is that even if you are this legacy owner who claims to have never defaulted, who has this 20-year relationship with your lender, at this point in the cycle, if you can't put up more collateral or bring something to the table, you might lose your properties.
Check out the whole article on our website now. Thanks, Susie.
Thanks.